Over the next couple of decades, many of the biggest properties on the planet are about to enter the public domain. We're talking Superman, Batman, Bugs Bunny, Donald Duck, and more. And now the corporations may be putting pressure on different countries to change the rules to fix the scales in their favor. We'll explain it to you and show you the latest Canadian law change and why it might impact the future of your favorite stuff being available for free. Welcome, one and all. The Pro Channel is here for you. It is the place where Holly Weird wakes up to the fact they need to make some money, and we're here to help them do just that. Today we're talking about the public domain, and we have a legal expert, an attorney who is ready to walk us through what is going on with copyrights, trademarks, and more, so that you know what's going on when it comes to Canada changing their laws regarding the public domain, as well as whether or not the rest of North America might follow suit, the United States and Mexico. Analysis like you will not find anywhere else, straight, fresh, out of the oven, right now. Well, in that case, let's get to a story that I think is exclusive. Nobody else really talking about it here on the internet, and that's really saying something considering how big the internet is. Oh, wait, here's an article on the internet that contradicts it. But here it is, and folks, we're going to analyze this. We've got Ron here to do just that. Apparently, there's been a major change to Canadian copyright, and it's got some folks out there wondering if this might be coming to the United States, and if it might have an impact, and also if it might have something to do with the fact that so many cartoons, characters, movies, etc., are all about to enter the public domain. They might be trying to get ahead of it. Here it is right now. It says, the general term of copyright protection in Canada is changing from the life of the creator plus 50 years to the life of the creator plus 70 years, effective December 30th, 2022. This term extension was agreed to in the United States, Canada-Mexico Agreement Trade Treaty. This happened, of course, 2 years ago, essentially. Well, 1.5 years ago, maybe. No, it was 13 months.
A year ago.
A year ago, essentially. The new term matches the general copyright term in the United States and a number of other countries around the world. When copyright in a work expires, the work enters the public domain, meaning it is no longer protected, and there are no longer any restrictions on its use. This change will create two rules for determining whether most works are protected by copyright or are in the public domain in Canada. One, if the creator died in 1971 or earlier, copyright has expired and their works are now in the public domain. Two, if the creator died in 1972 or later, their works are protected for their life plus 70 years, which would put that, of course, into 2040 at minimum. This change means that very few works will enter the public domain in Canada in the next 20 years, up until 2042. And so this is now effective in Canada. Of course, 13 months ago is when this came through. And we've had quite a few people reaching out to us, Ron, and so this was the perfect opportunity to bring this up. The question was, well, might we see something, an adjustment coming up in the next few years inside the United States to try to delay out this flood, this rush of copyrights that will be switching to public domain? We just saw Steamboat Willie land in the public domain, and that's been rather confusing. We've had you on in the past to talk about where the lines are, where copyright ends and trademark begins and where public domain is. And it seems like it's already confusing even to legal experts, in terms of we might enter some areas we're not quite sure, like what is Steamboat Willie versus what is Mickey Mouse? You get the idea. Do you foresee that there might be an opportunity for change to happen yet again to the copyright extensions in the United States, as it won't just be Disney? I mean, we're talking about Bugs Bunny, Donald Duck. We're talking about so many major characters. We're also talking about movies themselves. As we get into the next 20 years, you're going to start seeing major movies entering the public domain. Do you foresee that there's going to be a need to alter this, or do you think that we've come to grips with the idea that so much from the 20th century is going to be publicly available?
Well, this actually brings Canadian law into line with American law. We moved to 70 years past the life of the creator a couple of years ago. I think it's preposterous, but it is what it is. And I don't see it. I'm not aware of, I don't have my finger on the pulse of copyright legislation the way I might have a couple of years ago, but I don't think there's any movement afoot to extend it any further. And in fact, I think there is a fairly strong consensus that we've probably pushed it out as far as it can go. As I've mentioned on other streams that you have actually been part of, Pro, copyright on Steamboat Willie is copyright on that particular cartoon. Um, the the character may or may, as you point out, may or may not be Mickey Mouse, but to the extent that it is Mickey Mouse, and I think everyone agrees it's Mickey Mouse, it's more protected by trademark now than by anything else. And the Steamboat Willie copyright in and of itself, it's grist for the mill for panels like this and people to comment on and stuff like that. But I don't think it has a very substantial commercial effect on anything. I know that Disney is, trying its best to make it extremely expensive for anyone who tries to take advantage of the change for, the public domain status of Steamboat Willie. I get that. Trademark and copyright bullies do that. That's their policy, and it's it's unfortunate, but they have a lot of money at stake, and it's not surprising. It's entirely rational for them to do that to the extent that they get away with it, and that they will not be penalized for it. So
Ron, as we see, as Donald Duck and the Looney Tunes, and then also major films that came out in the 40s, that some of those films, we're talking about stuff. I mean, Superman and Batman, for example, are going to, in some way, land into the public domain. And what way that is, I can't really figure out quite yet, because again, it's the question of, what is the original design? Where does the line for the original design end? Where does the trademark begin, etc.? Do you foresee that all of these companies then are going to make it very difficult for people to use these items as they hit the public domain? Or do you foresee that there'll be such a groundswell of people just using them anyway that the companies are going to lose control of it?
So I think you're asking the right questions. I don't think I think there is sort of a groundswell phenomenon going on. Yes, not so much in terms of advocacy. And I would also make a point of observing that Congress has ceased to function for several years now as a legislating body. It's an entirely a political activism venue. So I don't think any serious issues are.
What does Congress still do? I don't even know what they do at this point. I don't
know
what they achieve.
I don't. I mean, it's not. Like I said, it's political activism and showmanship. Obviously, it's not necessary for Congress to pass laws for the executive branch to do whatever it wants and to spend whatever it wants. But going back to the second part of your comment, the internet is going to make it very, very difficult to stop people from doing more or less what they want to a very large extent. I mean, the question is always going to be, not so much can you do what you want, but can you monetize what you want? And that's a lot harder than, doing what you want, perhaps anonymously, versus being able to roll out some kind of product, some kind of movie or, media product or a video that isn't going to be taken down. And I just put into the chat a link to an article that I wrote a few years ago about how the Ninth Circuit has several years ago upheld an award of damages against someone who said he would turn your car into a Batmobile. Bring me your car, and I will Batmobile-ize it. And the defendant, who was represented by a friend of mine, said, "Well, what the heck is the Batmobile now? I mean, how many different iterations of the Batmobile has it been? Well, and even if you accept the premise that a car is a literary character that's entitled to copyright protection, is that, haven't they moved on? Isn't it, as long as these laws are enforced in the Hollywood courts, in the Southern District of California, or the Ninth Circuit, the studios will get every benefit of the doubt. But in terms of, can you make your parody? Can you make your commentary? Yeah, you'll be able to get away with that. But will you be able to monetize? I mean, why would people be obsessed about, do your own creativity? If in fact you're making a real parody, you want to make a real social commentary, then you should be protected under parody, regardless of whether it's the copyright life.
Guys, we're about to see an absolute deluge of some of the biggest characters, in Western society landing in the public domain. Superman, Batman, Donald Duck, Bugs Bunny, the Looney Tunes, and the list goes on and on. Major classic films also hitting there as well. Your thoughts, guys, on how the corporations are going to handle this and how it plays out amongst the populace?
First off, I'm Batman is going to take on a whole new meaning here in a few years. But it's going to be very, very fascinating, and I'm actually kind of morbidly excited for this happening, because we're kind of the first era of people that ever have gotten to experience this. You look at old pieces of art hitting the public domain, and they ain't got anywhere near the amount of cultural impact of, say, like Steamboat Willie, the Looney Tunes, Batman, Superman, vice versa. Eventually,
it's hard to replicate the Mona Lisa, I would say.
Valid point. Just keep people away from throwing things at her, please.
Yeah, leave the soup out of this.
Yeah, please. But I will say, we are going.
Nolan,
to
you heard why they were justified though in throwing soup at the Mona Lisa. They said it was vegan. Well, they said it was vegan soup, so it was okay. Go ahead, Nolan. Sorry, I apologize.
I wish they broke out the Mandela effect reason. Like, they were like, hey, this ain't the original, and threw it on there. That would have been a funnier reason. I would think that would have been more logical. But no, I would honestly, is it bad? I'm kind of excited to see the chaos break out of this with the corporations. Like, oh my God, we're ruining all these characters, and yet somehow the fans are making better films than we are.
Or better yet, that they have been so lax in what they're doing that they haven't come up with anything new that they can market.
Yes. I mean, you know what, confession about me, I have never lived through the 80s, but my God, I feel like I have lived in the 80s, because that's all Hollywood seems to make these days. The sheer lack of originality, outside of, say, like Stranger Things or something like that, there's barely been anything new. And in the old days, it used to be, you had to make something original, so you finally got the chance to make something you dreamed of eventually doing. Take a look at, like, Peter Jackson. He made Lord of the Rings and such. Granted, that was a Tolkien adaptation, and he finally got to make that King Kong film he always wanted to make. Nowadays, you pretty much have to adapt IP in order to make something original. So for these characters to hit the public domain, it is going to be very game-changing. I think there's going to be a lot of really dumb court cases, dumb in quotation marks, mind you, to where it's going to be a bit kind of like trying to control a fire, There's no real predictability with it. And is it bad? I'm just saying, embrace the chaos, baby.
Yeah, well, no, I think there's a fair point there. When you think about, we have the same issue right now in politics, where a lot of our leaders are very old or very young, and that middle age area is problematic and ineffective. Forgive me if you're a middle-aged politician watching this right now, but there's been this gap here where all of our leaders and a lot of our CEOs are older, showing a problem in succession here. And if we translate this idea over into the creative fields, we have these ancient IPs to the point where we are worried about 100-year-old pieces of content and characters. And we've gotten to, I don't want to call this a late stage empire, but it applies in this situation here, where instead of creating new things, instead of building new things and going into that new frontier, we are worried about holding on to power and clutching on to the things that we are scared to lose. If you created something that was better than Superman right now, people would run to the theaters, but they are so scared of releasing something that doesn't already have an IP attached. If there was a brand new superhero film that came out today and was a lot like Superman, and not just something where, okay, what if Superman was a murderous child? I'm looking at you, James Gunn. I mean, a real, like, bright and hopeful superhero film right now, I think people would be interested in that. But instead, we have corporate content part 29 that they need to reshoot for another $300 million.
Excellent.
Well,
Yeah, you're right, and both Ron and I are nodding our heads and gesticulating madly. But I'll say this: you're right. They're trying to hang on to power. This happens in every part of our world now. We're looking at the lack of innovation isn't because people have completely abandoned imagination or the will to make something new. It's the fact that the corporations have invested so much money into these things that they don't want to invest more money in the future. They're
Franchiseification.
yeah, because they're hamstrung by the markets that they worship now. They have to continue to turn out the cheese whiz, right? Grind that out, and you're gonna get that constantly until you again go after these copyright laws, which I think are far too long. We can protect art, but the thing is none of this is terribly original. We don't have original things anymore, and this is the same problem with monopolies. You're monopolizing intellectual property in a way that is detrimental to society, to growth, to innovation, to all of these things. This is such a broad concept. It's a conversation that would require a fairly lengthy video. But we're in stagnation. There's no innovation. There's no creativity. We talk about it. That's in fact most of our channels are probably based on the conversation around the lack of new. Well, the problem is we're allowing the protection of the old to the detriment of or the development of the new. So it's a real problem, and I see that when we do get a new fresh batch of politicians in there, perhaps they should take a look at that, because this country was not the kind of empire that was born, the way that other countries have been. There's been no great dynasties. Instead, we've allowed for corporations in this modern age to replace those, and that's again been much to
Big
our
picture.
detriment.
You're hitting a culture.
Yeah.
Big picture. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why you're the culture casino.
Well, I
Get ourselves.
do my
Culture,
best.
Culture also brought up Cheese Whiz, and this is the only time that I've ever been sad. Of the vast number of clips that we've created for this show, there was one time where the clip from Blues Brothers, where the guy says, "Get me my Cheese Whiz, boy." I had that clip, and I was going to upload it to the channel. I thought, why? I will literally, I love it, but I'll never use it.
No.
Culture made me sad today.
I just want to point out here, as long as we're on the concept of old leaders, founding fathers, there's a quick article from Business Insider. Many founding fathers were shockingly young when the Declaration of Independence was signed. Alexander Hamilton was 21 years old. Nathan Hale, 21. Yes. Talmadge, 22. Robert Townsend, 22. Betsy Ross was 24 years old. There are just so many of these great names that we picture them as old white men, but in fact they were what we would consider college age, people that we would have no expectation of maturity on their parts. I will say Ben Franklin was 70, and Thomas Jefferson was the ripe old ancient age of 33 years old.
Well,
When you started work at 7.
Right. There is a difference in life expectancy here, but we are turning to 70 or 80-year-olds to run everything here. The Disney company can't find a suitable successor for their company, and they're turning to a man in his 70s. Nothing against people in their 70s. Obviously, there is wisdom that comes with age, but when we have no other option in the world today than turning to people who should be retiring, should be long retired. This is a problem.
Well, I would
I
recommend.
completely agree, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think that's one reason why you go back to the past and you realize how young some of these people were because of the amount of opportunity they had in order to make these things happen. I think that's a major problem we've had in our society is there's just been so much gatekeeping, whether it be through copyright law or otherwise, that has kind of prevented people from actually really getting a chance to really put their foot out in there because they're afraid of getting smacked down by a theoretical lawyer or powerful politician and a more outside of media stake. And honestly, like you said, getting out some of these old guards to bring in some fresh faces could really possibly avoid some of these petty arguments that we're all having with each other.
I would highly recommend for anybody who wants to take a look at what the world was like and how quickly people matured at a younger age. Go read the personal memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant. It's a tremendous read and a great autobiography. I think you will greatly enjoy it and come away with an appreciation of how young people were when they began to work and think on much deeper things than we do now with the TikTok generations that we are producing.
But I would introduce, and this is sorry, I know I'm extending the subject, but I would introduce the idea that nobody has life experience at a young age anymore because they're so protected by helicopter parents, people that dive in to take the bullets from and the arrows and everything else from the society. There are no consequences for young people. They're not allowed to learn from mistakes. They're not allowed to make mistakes. In fact, you can't even tell them they've made a mistake.
Well, that's prime time to visit the Disney parks and go drinking around the world right there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think largely that's often to blame. But I mean, get off my lawn, kids. I can certainly do that all day here. But what I'm talking about is actually this is another reason why we have this abdication of responsibility of rearing young people to understand that there are consequences to actions or voting or all of these other things. And nobody's held to a particular standard, and nobody is able to make good decisions because they've never had the opportunities to make bad ones. This is a real issue. This happens so much in the education sphere now that I'm terrified what lawyers will look like in 20 years. Sorry, Ron, but I'm expecting.
I'm going to look every bit as good as I do now. I'm sure.
That's right.
I know, but you
Sexy.
understand my
It's
point.
a high bar.
No. This is a discussion that I have had myself with a number of younger lawyers and conservative scholars, and I say that and I've had different opinions because someone like David Latt, who I respect tremendously, is a really level-headed guy, is confident that the system will endure because of how it works, and others like me
I
have some real questions.
much.
Well, if you look at the corruption inside the not just the chambers of law in judges'
absolutely.
confines. Look at the fact that we have district attorneys as corrupt as they are, that are being exposed and are not, again, and will not be held accountable for their
No
actions.
accountability. That's
Yeah.
right. No accountability.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end yet again. This one goes in the can. Another video of excellence, down and out, but not forgotten, and available for you forever more. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you do indeed stick it to the algorithms. It is that notification bell. Drop a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. And as we always say at the end of these, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.